Namo Shakyamuni Buddha. So today we continue to study about the Four Noble Truth, and we know that up to now there's many problems around the world, especially the coronavirus that started in China, Wuhan, China, has spread out everywhere around the world, and that has become a global health problems. So that is why the Buddha mentioned that the first number two will relate to our physical sufferings. Of course, that relate to our mentality too. So let me play a short video clips about this kind of virus spreading. Let me share you the screen.
Government is racing to evacuate Americans from Wuhan as China sends medical reinforcements to the city where the deadly coronavirus outbreak began. Officials there say the virus is now spreading faster. So far, it's killed at least 81 people in China. More than 2,700 others have been infected across 13 countries. 5 of those cases are here in the U.S. Randy Innocentio has been covering the story from Beijing after leaving Wuhan last week. Randy, how are people there reacting?
Sure, good morning. Well, China's health minister, Ma Xiaowei, has said that he expects infections to continue to rise, and of course that has everyone here in the country even more nervous. Now get this, Wuhan and at least 16 other cities with a population of more than 50 million people are still on some kind of transport lockdown. And we spoke to one American stuck in Wuhan, and he says that panic is starting to rise.
The biggest problem is I just wish I could get my family off where we need to go to America.
American Justin Steves and his wife Ling have lived together in Wuhan for the past year and a half. Just 3 weeks ago, Ling gave birth to their baby boy, Cole.
My biggest fear is that I would go out, get sick, not knowing it, and then come home and spread it to Ling and the baby.
Steves was a soldier in the National Guard for 5 years, but his wife doesn't have a U.S. visa yet, and he can't leave Wuhan to finish her paperwork.
Otherwise, I would have evacuated with the rest of the people and got my wife and kid out here.
He and reportedly 1,000 other Americans are now stranded as the Chinese government works to contain the deadly virus within its borders, but it's quickly worked its way around the world.
This case poses no immediate threat to the general public.
On Sunday, Los Angeles County officials tried to reassure the public they weren't in danger after 2 more cases in the U.S. were confirmed, one there and one in Maricopa County in Arizona, all while the number of infections worldwide continues to climb. Back in China, the epidemic has even forced the government to extend the massive Lunar New Year holiday by 3 days, so officials have more time to work to keep people from contracting and transmitting the virus. End quote.
Okay, anyway, so you see that now this epidemic happening around the globe, and China, they locked down at least 50 million people in that area, Wuhan area, and many foreigners try to leave the countries. So it's big problems nowadays. So again, that's why the Buddha emphasized on the problems of human that we need to recognize. Without that type of recognitions, we would not solve that problems. So having this physical body, we need to deal with aging, illness, and death. That's whether who we are, regardless of our nationalities, race, gender, and so forth. So these are the things that we need to face to the realities, and that's why the Buddha reminds us that we need to be religious and honest about our own physical or mental conditions. So he's very upfront about those problems. So he want to point out first that we need to recognize, accept, and move on. Otherwise, we create our own dukkha or another layers of suffering. That means the mental suffering when we resist those problems. That's why I say that the more we resist, the more it persists. If we don't accept what's happening and try to resolve the problems, so they're still there. So of course, hopefully the scientists around the world would come together to find the vaccine, medicine to deal with this type of virus. So anyway, so we need to recognize so that we can accept and move forward to find the way how to resolve these kind of problems physically and mentally. So when we understand that with that kind of problems, we would move on in our life. We would find some way to solve, and we recognize as because the mind, the body connect with each other. So whenever we have physical sufferings, it will relate to our mental suffering because of those intertwined conditions of our mind and the body. We cannot separate our mind from our body. That's why we need to deal with them. And of course, since we are not an expert in medical field, we would leave um, those field to the medical expert. But at least for us, we can handle our mentality. So that's why the Buddha say, if we recognize the physical problems or sufferings, and on the top of that, if we know how to transform our mind, we would have only one arrow that shoot us. Otherwise, we have two arrows that hurt us. And the one is the physical suffering, another one is the mental sufferings. So again, we need to recognize that kind of variety in our life. Otherwise, we will stress out, and the problem will be more accurate, right? So, for example, if we know that we have some kind of illnesses, and if we worry that kind of illnesses too much, the problems may be more accurate, more severe. But if we accept and try to find some treatments for that illnesses, so I think eventually we can handle. Otherwise, it will be the problems for us. So even in our daily life, we need to recognize how our emotion relate to our physical body. So let me share with you some short video clips about the body and mind connection.
Described in captioned media program. In the classroom and on the go. DCMP.org. Human Relations Media presents Mind-Body Connection, how your emotions affect your health. Horizontal bars gives way to images of people.
I've always had problems with anxiety. I think emotional factors affect physically to a great deal. My body was speaking to me, telling me that I was ignoring red flags. It's another way of your body saying, listen, there's something toxic in your life.
Scenes between the images are blurry.
With depression, just your mind and your body are kind of feel detached. And it wasn't until I was figuring out ways to reattach the two together that helped me get on the right track.
When I am exercising, I get this release. It's a sense of being one with my body and my emotions.
A young woman holds a yoga pose.
Mind and body are connected, have always been connected. Our mind is embedded in our body. Our body is interacting with the mind at all times.
Against the background of the blurred scenes, title in yellow, the mind-body connection. How your emotions affect your health. A young female host stands against an off-white background.
People used to believe that physical and emotional health were separate. They thought emotional problems such as anxiety and depression were different and distinct from physical ailments and disease. One set of problems resided in the mind and the other in the body. Today we know that physical health and emotional health are very closely connected. In this program, we will hear from several young people who have dealt with both emotional and physical problems. We'll also hear from Dr. John Grady, a psychiatrist, and Dr. Peter Montnitty, a clinical psychologist. To start, we'll look at the center of our emotions, the brain.
Title, The Mind and the Brain, Montminy.
Mind and body are connected, have always been connected. Where's the mind? In the brain. Where's the brain? In the body.
The human brain is amazingly complex. It consists of over 100 billion nerve cells called neurons that transmit signals throughout the body. Neurons send signals to each other with the help of chemicals called neurotransmitters.
Anyway, so you can see that clearly the body and mind connect with each other. So there's no separation between these two. So that's why when we have the illness, we need to calm our mind so that we can find ways how to deal with the illnesses, like taking the medicine, rest ourselves, and so forth. So if we stress ourselves too much, if we have so much anxiety about those illnesses, the problems may be accurate, the problems may be severe. So that we need to recognize us, how the body and mind connect together. Okay, so if we want to have a healthy life, again, we need to take care of our body, our physical body, not to indulge in all kind of entertainments that may harm ourselves. And on the top of that, we need to take care of our mentality. If we stress out too much, if we're so stressful, if we have so much anxiety, there's no way for us to have the peacefulness. That's why the Buddha say, if we recognize the first noble truth that we need to deal with them, the physical suffering as well as the mental suffering. Again, if we know how to deal with them, we can transfer them from being suffer into happiness, a peacefulness. So it's two sides of the coins. Otherwise, we harm ourselves and harm other people easily if we don't recognize this type of variety. So let me show you how stress affects to the body. And here, so when we stress out too much, it may cause the headache. It may affect the brain tissues. It may hurt our heart. It may impair our digestion. It may weaken our immune system. it causes us to gain more weight. It may trigger asthma attack and so forth. So when we have that kind of mental disruption, like stress, anxiety, and so forth, it affects to our physical body and vice versa. So that's why the Buddha says it's better to recognize them so that we can move on, so that at least we're at peace with our mind, no matter what happened with our body. Yes, if we go to be 100-year-old or 110 and so forth, no doctor could help us to remain calm, to be healthy again. But at least if we know how to maintain our peace of mind, at least we could transform them again. You see that for those emotions could harm our body. Anger weaken our liver, grief weaken our lung, worry weaken our stomach, stress weaken our heart and brain, fear weaken our kidney, and so forth. So, so again, they connect with each other. So that's why we need to recognize, and as a doctor, the Buddha reminds us that we need to recognize them, to recognize the root of the problems instead of just recognizing the physical symptom. Because if we don't recognize the body and the mind connect with each other, there's no way for us to have a healthy life. So no matter what happened, we need to understand that so that we can solve the problems. That's why in the East, especially in India and in China, in the past for 1,000 years, they have raised some kind of herbs to have people endued with the physical illnesses. But of course, especially in Buddhism, the Buddha provides some tools for us to transform our mind. That's why later on, we will study about what we call the Eightfold Path, that include meditation, the right meditation, right concentration, right mindfulness, so that we can deal with them. So in several sutras, Buddha teachings, the Buddha provide all those prescription like the doctor that pinpoint the illness of the patient, and the next step is to remind the patient the reason why they have that kind of illnesses. And the third step is the doctor remind us that no matter what happened, we can have some kind of treatment for that kind of illnesses. And the last step, the doctor may say, oh, if we follow their prescription or guidelines or taking their medicine, eventually will be better. So does the Buddha. He provides or he point out the problems that we have to deal, the mental illness and the physical illness. So later on, he point out the cause, the reason why we have those illnesses or sufferings. And the third step he point out is that no matter what, we can resolve those problems. And the last one, the Buddha say, if we follow his footsteps, his guidelines of the Eightfold Paths, we can transform them. So we need to recognize that. So in the Buddhist canyons, there are several Buddha teachings about those techniques or path, how to deal with them. Like the Sutra of the Buddha as a red doctor, the Sutra on healing mental destruction of improper meditation, the Sutra of healing death or disease, and so forth. Again, the Buddha has ability to help us to cure of our disease, regardless of the situation. And on the top that, he reminds us that we need to take into account of the karmas together with the mentalities that may cause our illnesses. Without understand that, we just see the system or the problems. We could not know how to resolve that. For example, the reason why people have some problems with parasite because they may love sushi too much. And we know the news that this is nearby, actually the place where they start the coronavirus is a wild animal market that people sell the flesh of animals. Of course, they may kill them on the spot, and that create a bad karma for themselves. So of course, it would not be standardized because of consuming those kind of meat at that market. But on the top that, the karma come to place, because if we harm anyone else, definitely they will try to revenge. For those the small animals, they would not have much strength to resist, to protect themselves when they were killed. But the hatred toward the one that killed them is still there. So that's why we need to be careful when we involve with that kind of karma. Somehow, besides the illness, the cause of illness of those kind of special viruses, we need to put the karma into account. Otherwise, we don't see why we have that type of illnesses, and we just blame on the virus. Again, for example, if someone loves sushi, they love to eat raw fish, and of course, when they consume, they have more chance to have parasites, and they have that kind of disease or virus in their body. They may eat up their organs, and this again, they may blame on those viruses, but still the problem is that they consume those meat, flesh. That's why they need to recognize us. So that's why the Buddha in the Sutra of the Notice, he remind the patient that we need to be careful and selective what kind of food we consume. In the Asian traditions, Vietnamese tradition, we say that when we say something, we need to be careful. When we consume things, we need to be careful. Otherwise, the disaster may come how we talk with other people, and illness may come how we consume the meat or how we consume the food. Yeah, for example, if we are not careful in the way what we interact or talk with other people, we may say something that may be offended uh, to others, or we may say something that create chaos, so far. So of course, the retributions would come to us when we create that type of chaos or that kind of offense. And of course, on the top of that, if we not um, careful about what kind of food we consume, yeah, we would consume those flesh meat, and we would create disaster of ourselves. We bring in the parasite, we bring in the virus, and of course, they eat us up. They will harm our body and may spread to other people too. That's why the Buddha reminds us that we need to be careful, be selective of what type of food we consume. So for the Mahayana traditions, we need to uh, recognize the sufferings of the animals that we kill for our meat. So that's why it's better for us to remain vegetarians, so that we would not harm anyone else or harm any sentient beings or animals, because everyone wants to live, no one wants to die. So with that kind of approach and practice, it's much better for us to remain healthy, as well as reduce the or stay away from the killing karmas. And in this Bhagavad Sutra, again, the Buddha reminds us that we need to be careful what type of food we consume, and we need to consume the food at the proper times. Of course, logically and reasonably, if we eat all the times, our stomach work without resting. This may bring the suffering, the illnesses to our stomach. But if we eat in the proper times, for example, we may have breakfast at certain times, like 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock, and we may consume lunch. We have lunch around 11 or 12, or dinner around 6 or 7. So if we eat regularly, our stomach internal organs would work properly. Otherwise, if we consume the food irregularly, it may bring the toll to our stomach as well as our inner organs. And if we have some kind of illness, we need to stay in touch with the doctors, medical health professions, so that they could give us the medical advice to deal with our illnesses. And the next one, the Buddha said we need to have the optimistic or hopeful outlook about life, so that we could keep up with our well-being, instead of being depressed, instead of having the negative state of mind. It might affect to our body negatively. And on the top of that, the Buddha say we need to be kind, be compassionate, and be appreciative toward the one who care for us, or even toward anyone. If we have that kind of kindness and compassion, that's easy for us to have the peaceful life. And again, the Buddha remind us that we need to have that type of attitude, the compassion attitude, the corporate attitude, the love and kindness attitude, uh, uh, and so forth toward other people, including our family members, our friends, especially the healthcare providers, so that we can live in peacefulness and harmony with them, so that they can help us when we need to deal with our own illnesses. And in that sutra, the Buddha also provide some guidelines for the healthcare providers, like doctor or nurses, how to help patients. He mentioned that as healthcare provider, especially the doctors, they need to discover the origin of illnesses. That means they need to recognize why the patient have that kind of illnesses, and by discovering the root of the illnesses, the doctors, healthcare providers could achieve a thorough understanding of illnesses. So that means as soon as they recognize the problems of those illnesses, they would understand what's happening to their patients. And the next step is, because they have that type of clear understanding about the illnesses, the doctor may prescribe or give the appropriate medication for their patient to cure those illnesses. And the last step, the Buddha mentioned that even after the doctor, the healthcare providers provide the medicines, some treatment to cure the illnesses of their patient, they also need to guide their patient how to prevent from the occurrence of those illnesses. So it's so uh, reasonable, it's so feasible with nowadays a modern age healthcare system. So if we visit doctors, they would follow the similar patterns that even they help us to overcome some kind of illnesses. They would give us some ways, instruction to stay away from those illnesses. For example, if we have stomachache, of course, they may give us some medicine to deal with that stomachache. And on the top of that, they may remind us that not to eat spoiled food or consuming them too much and so forth. That's prevention skill, knowledge they need to provide us so that we could stay away from that type of stomach problems. Of course, besides the doctors, the healthcare providers like nurses, they need to uh, uh, have the compassionate mind, action, attitude toward their patients. It's not easy to help the strangers because they don't relate each other. But as the responsibilities of the healthcare providers, like doctor and nurses, they need to take care of the patient as their vows, impartially, regardless of who they are. So with that type of good heart, with that kind of compassion, with that kind of understanding and caring, the doctors and the nurses could provide the appropriate care for the patients, and the patient would feel more comfortable to explain to doctors or nurses about their symptoms, so that they would be provide the appropriate medicines to cure their illnesses. Again, the role of medical providers like nurses and doctors is so important, that they are not only provide the medicines to cure the illnesses of the patients, but also they are the one that may give the comfort to their patients. Otherwise, if it's too cold, they would not pay much attention about the symptoms of their own patients, and definitely the patient would not dare to express the problems that they may encounter, and there's no way for the doctor to know how to find the appropriate medicines or techniques or treatments for them. So again, compassion, loving kindness, and caring are so important for medical healthcare providers like doctors and nurses. So besides us, they need to be ready to help the patients with that kind of dedication. Uh, they could help the patient to overcome the sufferings physically. If they not, if they don't have the mind, if they don't have intention to help the patient, it's not easy for them to fulfill their responsibilities as the healthcare providers. And when they interact with the patient, again, they need to say in the compassionate words, voice, understanding voice, words, so that their patient may feel more comfortable. Otherwise, it's not easy for the patient to take, because when they are sick physically, they have that kind of suffering. If the healthcare providers could not comfort or calm down their own patient, the patient would be more, that may have more anxiety, depression, and stresses. Again, with that kind of emotion, it may aggravate the illnesses more. So the jobs of the healthcare providers, like doctor or nurses, like a mother who calm down the children when their children are sick, when their children are hurt, or when their children fall down. So this is so important for them how to interact with their own patients before they provide any kind of medicines or treatment to them. Having a compassionate, understanding voice or talk is so important. That's the first ever step that they need to recognize, so that the patient know that they have someone that are willing to help them to recover from illnesses. Of course, during especially this type of global epidemics of virus, many doctors, nurses, volunteers to go to the city where the virus spread around the malls. So that show their dedication about helping others. So that's just one of the compassion act that we could recognize from them. And on the top of that, the healthcare providers, the nurse or the doctor need to provide their patients with proper food or correct amount of food in certain times according to nature of the illnesses. So again, if we visit the hospital, depend upon what kind of illnesses that the patient encounter or have. The doctors would prescribe the feasible food so that the patient could consume. Um, let's say if somehow one has stomach problems, yeah, the doctor would prescribe some kind of light meal for them to consume. If someone may have stroke, the doctor may provide some suitable food for them to consume to reduce the chance of being having the stroke again. So the next step, the Buddha say that the healthcare providers need to have the special skill to guide the patients, not only healing their body, but also their mind, in the way that, like you mentioned recently, that the doctor need to provide appropriate medicines, treatments, as well as preventive techniques or ways for the patient to overcome the illnesses, as well as to prevent them from having that type of illnesses again. So that is the instruction that the Buddha provide for the healthcare providers as well as the patient, so that they could overcome the illnesses. So according to Indian medicine or Chinese medicine, it says that there's many different reasons why people have illnesses. For the Chinese medicine, they say that there are internal elements that cause the illnesses, like they have so much stress, anxiety, rumination, sadness, fear, and so forth. And external elements, conditions that may affect to the health of the patients includes the coldness, the heat, the dryness, the dampness, and the wind, and so forth. When someone have some types of emotion, like I mentioned recently, if they have so much anger in their mind, it would harm their liver. If they have anxiety, it would harm their lungs. If they have a lot of ruminations in thought, it would affect their spleen, and if they have some kind of shock in their life, it may hurt their kidneys. So in that particular sutra, again, the sutra of Buddha's notice, the Buddha mentioned 10 causes and conditions of the illnesses. So he lists out these reasons are sitting for too long, a period of times without moving. For example, if we sit here, let's say 1 hour, 2 hours, 3 hours without movements, definitely the blood could not circulate well, and that's why our legs may be numb, and we have some kind of pain around our legs, our shoulder, and so forth. That's cause illnesses. And if we eat too much, if we consume too much food, definitely it may cause obesity problems. If we consume too much of food, we may feel heavy in our stomach. We could not have much activities because of that kind of heaviness with the food. And if we have the sadness, again, we would have raise the problems in the mind, like depression. and if we have anger, if we have excessive sexual desire, if we hold our breath, postpone urination, and so forth. So again, the Buddha say that those reasons may cause our illnesses. Okay, since time is up, let me stop here today, and next time we can discuss about the Buddha advice on how we live healthy. Nam mô Shakyamuni Buddha.